It's the cry of generation. It's a stirring in our soul. It's dreams still in focus. It's hope still whole. For children that are and those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. No more delays, denials can ignore our voices, nor suppress our choices. We come for all that God has gave, unashamed descendants of the indigenous immigrants and the once enslaved. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. Liberation when we read, love when we lead, moving at the speed of student needs, pushing against the abundance of oppressive greed. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. We are here with the Anne Rowe. You are a giant in community. You're a giant in education work. So it's great that we can talk about justice with you, because I know that at the heart of who you are has been this commitment to justice in all of your roles that you've had. So if you would introduce yourself a little bit, then we're just going to dive in with the conversation. Tell folks who you are a little bit, and then we'll dive in.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Well, first, thanks for inviting me in. It's always good to be with you and talk about these important things. So, a little bit about me. I've had the opportunity for a long time, probably 35 plus years now, to serve on a variety of community boards and be engaged in community in a number of ways. And those boards ended up, I was thinking about it as you invited me in here, focusing in kind of 4 areas: children, girls and women, education, and general policy. And so whether it ranges from Girls Incorporated to the Colorado Children's Campaign to Planned Parenthood to the Children's Museum, it's been an honor to work with amazing people on issues of really foundationally that end up talking about justice.
Yes.
And so I've been very fortunate to be engaged in that, and also had the honor of serving on the Denver Public School Board of Education for 8 years.
Yeah. You have seen it from a lot of different perspectives, as you just articulated. What has been the most difficult thing, in your view, of this march towards justice? What has shocked you? Is like, why is this so hard?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think a lot of us wish we knew and had the answer, because then we would do and come together, and we would hopefully be having a conversation about all the successes that we've had in justice and what's next.
Right.
I do think there have been times and intervals where we've pushed that needle, pushed that arc a little closer. An example of when the frustration comes in, why not? It comes from my experience on Planned Parenthood. We were moving along, opening clinics, serving women, giving women the health care they needed in Colorado, and primarily in our rural areas. And I was on the board when Governor Owens and Jane Norton were elected, and they defunded Planned Parenthood, and they caused us to close 2 of our clinics that were serving the only option for women to get health care. And so you get frustrated and angry, and you want to fight. And I think part of the frustration, and I think it's exacerbated right now, is it always feels like you have to fight for justice. You have to. And you and I have been in some good fights, and we have been proud to fight. But I actually see justice as this really optimistic place to be. So, when we fight, we win. I would actually say when we come together, we win. And we have a hard time getting past the fight, because the fight suggests there's also losers.
Right.
Where if we work really hard to think about how do we come together, then we can actually win, and then we can actually get to a place, the end result of justice.
How did you masterfully, in some ways, do that when you were on the DPS school board, as we talk about some justice-related stuff, and you talk about folks coming together. There's 7 people who sit on the DPS board. How do you bring those, because to your point, a lot of times it lands in a fight. And we saw many times where it was a 4-3, and it wasn't because it was 4-3 because the idea was bad. There was just 4-3 votes because there was a side, and there were people who just decided to fight. But there were times where it was a lot of 7-0, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you get to these unanimous, aligned, of which I love that the justice is very optimistic, and it is about us moving together. How did you do that on 8 years of the school board?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I when I look at my term,
And you served as president, right? That's the other thing.
I served as president for my last 4 years.
Yeah, your last 4 years, yeah.
So I feel like I was on 3 very different boards.
Okay.
So when I came onto the board, we were in what you described. We were a 4-3 board.
Yeah.
And the 4 were determined to move forward on a pathway, and at that time the 3 were very much like, that is not the pathway. So you get into the fight, and you get into, if you show me the votes, then we'll talk.
Right.
Very unhealthy place to be, very difficult. Then I think what happened is community started speaking up, various groups, whether it was Padres, whether it was A+ Denver, whether it was all kinds of groups representing different parts of community, were basically saying, our kids deserve better, so you all need to actually represent.
Yes.
And I was incredibly fortunate to work with some of the most extraordinary leaders in our community, who you're probably talking to as well, or at least I hope you are. And while we had very different perspectives and some rigorous disagreements on maybe how to get there, from a value standpoint, from a belief in kids, from our starting with kids, in that an equity lens, and we were all in different places of learning with regard to what that meant. Yeah. If we did that, we could do better for kids. Mm-hmm. And so we still had rigorous debates, but we did that in a way where we were all aligned about what hopefully our North Star was. Mm-hmm. I don't think we were as far along in thinking about our North Star is justice, to be honest. Yeah. Our North Star was, we believe that all kids can achieve, so how do we create environments to do that? Right. So maybe it's on the pathway to justice.
Yes, yeah. 3 boards, you said, right? So there's this 4-3, there's this board, which I think you articulated well about what that was like these people who said, we set a North Star, and while we're gonna have rigorous debate and we're going to have different perspectives, we're going to let this North Star be the North Star, and that's going to pull us back together. You had a 3rd board that you kind of served on.
Well, you know, the middle board was incredibly aligned.
Yeah.
And then we brought in, which I think was actually really healthy, some younger, newer perspectives and voices. We also saw a change, because what you said earlier, Vernon, was really powerful. It was like, why isn't this moving along more quickly? Why isn't the change impacting me? Right. And it was true. Yeah. I mean, we were thinking we're making these bold decisions, and it ended up tweaking things as opposed to transforming things. So those new voices came in and really questioned a lot of what we were doing, found that incredibly healthy, and then at the same time, there was all of this going on in our country that was causing this fight thing. We all need to fight for things, right? And I'm right, therefore you're wrong. Right. And so started to push back, which then, after we left in 19, the board changed dramatically, and so now we're in that stage again of how do we try to come together to actually get back to focus on kids and ultimately justice.
Right, because we were, other folks that have sat in the chair have said the same thing. It's like there was a point where if any lasting transformation happened, it happened when we were a we, right? When we moved together, when we all felt the sting of the injustice and we all moved to remedy that. And I think you articulate very well, like this tweaking versus transforming. I'm gonna steal that from you, right? This tweaking versus transforming, and justice is how do we take the jangling discords of our time and how do we make them no longer jangling discords, right?
Yeah.
And you very much so, we were in this space where that was probably happening, and then social stuff reminded us, and I think we're in that moment again where some of the social happenings remind us that those jangling discords are still there. Like we can sometimes be in our district bubble or our neighborhood bubble and we think, hey, the world is good, and then all of a sudden something shocks the system and says, actually, those were just tweaks.
Yeah.
Those were not transformations, and people still have some of the dangerous mindsets that they have had, and they don't believe that some kids can learn and some kids can achieve, and then you're back into this fight again. And I think that is well articulated, that justice is not a fight. I love that justice is not a fight. Justice is kind of like, it's the North Star, and it becomes our obligation to figure out how we move together, right?
Yeah.
How did you do it, though? That's what I'm saying. Your
Well,
leadership was, because I know you navigated some very tense, just like you said, rigorous debates, and you did move some things to your credit, in the direction of justice for kids. How did you do that? Because you came out of one that was this 4-3 tension, you learned, and then you led in a way that helped to heal some of those
Yeah.
divides.
Well, I'd like to put it in a we stance. I was part of a team. Yes, I was officially the president of the board.
Yeah.
But you know the folks I was working with,
Yeah.
and these are some of the most extraordinary
Yes.
leaders we've ever had the privilege. And working with folks like yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think we had a continuity
Hmm.
of fundamental belief for a 10-year
Yes.
plus period, which is pretty extraordinary. And we literally had a continuity of leadership at the district.
Right.
Which was incredible, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Right.
But that matters, because if it were so easy, we would make the decisions and change would happen. But we know it's not, so we could at least stay on a pathway
Right.
that showed progress, and hopefully be smart enough to learn what wasn't happening,
Yeah.
what structurally needed to be changed to actually go from this to this.
Right. That speaks volumes too. Justice is not stagnation, but it's definitely stability, right? Because that's not what you weren't saying we were stagnant, but we did have a stability that allowed us to move and see growth and learn and shift and change. And when, to me, in this moment, it feels like unraveled to some degree, because that continuity, that those relationships, that collaborative, it has been fragmented. And I think, to your point, some of the social pressures that we've been dealing with that have kind of, sometimes some of the stuff, and I think to your point about some of the younger energy that came onto the board, really saying, hey, that stuff was just swept under the rug, it wasn't dealt with, right? Which is right, which is true.
Yeah.
And so I think we are in this place now, is how do we achieve justice when we have folks who don't believe in it, and folks just believe, as a previous interviewer person said, is like, it just might be this way.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting in this whole social situation that we've been living in for the last 8 years, and the ability for some of our ugly inner biases and where we come from and whomever we are, being allowed not only to be said, and that in one way is okay, because then you can have a discussion,
Yeah.
but made a norm or okay, and certain beliefs, once again, that we thought through all of our work together and through learning, all of us, that we could move towards this situation of true justice for
Right.
all. I agree with you. Unraveled may be a mild statement
Yeah,
for where
yeah.
we are now. And so how do we, one, accept that and understand that and say, okay, there's some deep-seated stuff going on here, but it's only going to create more fights if we keep saying, again, I'm right, so you're wrong,
Right.
and you're oppressive, and
Right.
you're this and that thing, and all come together and say, there's this beautiful place called justice, where if we actually do that, it could be really cool.
Yeah.
And I think
I got goosebumps hearing you say that. Right?
Yeah,
This
I
beautiful
wish,
place.
and I don't know, I mean, I'd love to actually interview you right now and say, how do we, you know, you're a leader in this community now, I'm just kind of the old white woman, right, sitting on the side, who had a great opportunity, but there's so much opportunity, and yet we're getting caught up in stuff that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a disconnect between the value that we place on everyone's humanity. I think, to your point, is there was a coalition, there was a group of neighbors who agreed that their neighbor's life was just as valuable, that their kids' life was just as valuable as their neighbor's kids. And we decided, let's go get that, right? Let's go get the world where that is true. And I think we cannot relent, right? And we cannot fail to pass the torch. I think that's what happens in a lot of movements as we age and we get a little weary because we've been in the grind for a little bit. We fail to, you know, because you're also a mom too. This is right,
Yeah.
and you have justice warriors that are actually on the front lines of this effort towards justice, educators, right? And so it's not like we can just tap out, because we are still very much invested in this, because we have children. I've got, you know, we get grandchildren, right? We've got these folks who are in it, and I think we can't lose hope. I love what you said, that is what we're justice realized is still what our aim is, and it always has
Yeah,
been.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and again, I know we've chatted about it, but I think the most important thing is it's almost the way we say it. We want to go out and fight and get back to at least where we were and then move forward. And I don't disagree with that, but by definition, you go into a fight to win,
Yeah.
which means someone has to lose.
Right.
And I think there are folks who have been convinced that they are losing
yeah,
because other
are
folks
winning.
are winning
Yeah.
or taking away.
Yeah.
And I see this as this incredible, huge, and maybe I'm being naive, pie, where if we can actually get there, it grows.
Mhm.
And it is extraordinary, and it's optimistic.
Yeah.
I do worry that we're all so beat up by all kinds of things, and some people literally, awful things are happening, that you're like, well, if I don't go out there and pound my fist and go yell at me, go yell at you and say, this is wrong, we need to stop oppressive things, we need to do that. All of that is true.
Yeah.
But isn't there a way to do it that makes all of us want to be part of that?
Right. And we've seen it in movements across the decades,
Yeah.
where we've been called to dream, we've been called to,
Right.
you know, to believe for a better space. And I think that's what this is to call people to that
Yeah.
that justice realized is possible. And it's only possible if Anne Rowe and Vernon Jones sit in a room together and say, hey, we're not finished yet. When I talk to my daughter who's in the education space, you talk to your daughter, and we say, hey, they're not finished, and we owe it to them to come alongside them to realize this world that we know is possible, despite all that's going on around us, despite all of the challenges are very much there. So it's possible.
And those generations that we care so much about, they're asking us right now, they're like, is it gonna be okay?
Right.
Is it really gonna be okay?
Right. And Anne Rowe says yes, right? It's going to be
So,
okay.
of course it's gonna be
Okay.
okay.
I appreciate
it's
your
gonna
time.
be okay,
I
yeah.
appreciate your time. I appreciate
So,
your
well,
life
thanks
and
so
your
much.
leadership and
Yeah.
just the continued, push that you have for us.
Well,
And,
thank you.
Yeah, and we're
Appreciate
glad
you.
you're here. All right.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Justice Cast. If you are moved and inspired by what you heard this week, we need you to do justice by doing 3 things. Number 1, like and share this episode with your friends and family and network. Number 2, sign and share the Do Justice Pledge. And 3, join us for an upcoming Do Justice action. You can find those listed on our website at www.faithbridgeco.org. That's www.faithbridgeco.org. Remember, the world we believe for is possible. Do justice.